it's really difficult for parents to accept that a sixth grader could get to the point where they are feeling so hopeless or where they are feeling so discouraged that they begin to believe that things would be better if they were no longer here. This is why it's important that we intervene early and that we provide schools and parents and families with the resources needed to help shepherd that young person through these moments of impulse. I'm Janelle Goodwill. I'm an InterVarsity alum, and I study how meaning in life and joy can be used to promote hope and help Black Americans prevent suicide. Welcome to InterVarsity World Changers.
Janelle, welcome to InterVarsity World Changers.
John, thanks so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. It's an honor to get to have you to come and hang out with us today. So the feeling is very much mutual here. Janelle, as we get started, will you just kick us off with a little bit of an introduction and help us get to know you?
Sure. So my name is Janelle Goodwill. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Chicago in the Crown Family School of Social Work Policy and Practice. I earned my PhD from the University of Michigan in psychology and social work. And so I moved from Ann Arbor to join the University of Chicago faculty in 2020. And now that I'm here, I'm leading a series of different research projects that focus on everything ranging from suicide prevention to race and racism to positive psychology. And so the work I'm doing here is feeling very meaningful. But I also live and work on the south side of Chicago. So that's been a really important aspect of my work in this time as well.
Okay, that's great. It's always fun for me to get to speak to somebody that's like living and moving in the world of psychology. That's my background. I have a master's in clinical psych. And so I was hoping to get a PhD, but it didn't work out that way. And I'm okay with that. Because I get to be here doing this instead. But it's fun to get to hang out with somebody that's in that world that I was in pursuit of for a while. So this will be a lot of fun to get to hang out and hear more about some of your research and its application. And so you already started to share a little bit about this, but based on some of the topics that you've brought up that you are in the midst of for research, I mean, there's like some weighty topics that you are really digging into, you and your colleagues. And so can you help us just start to set up a frame for some of that work, take us just a layer deeper into some of the work and the research that you're doing, and maybe some of the hope that you have for the application of the research that you're doing?
Great. Thanks, John, for that question. And yes, I'm always glad when I can talk with folks who also have some sort of interest in psychology or mental health, because it's so relevant and impacting all of our lives. And so I think being able to have mediums like this where I can translate and talk about the work with people and knowing that it's going to reach folks outside of the academy traditionally is really helpful. So thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
I'll say at this stage of my work, I am really focused on interventions. And so I'm currently leading a school-based intervention where my team and I are going into local middle schools here in Chicago, and we're offering a suicide prevention program or a suicide prevention intervention. And so we're working with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. We're working with schools that are near, not too far from the University of Chicago campus. So these are predominantly Black schools that are on the south side of the city. And we are really trying to reach young people early and trying to communicate that their lives have a purpose and have a meaning. And for those reasons, it's really important to ensure that mental health information is offered to students, to school staff, and even to families as early as possible. We are unfortunately seeing an increase in suicides and all sorts of negative mental health outcomes amongst young people in the country. Some of those things were already present before the pandemic, but then we saw that COVID-19 just kind of exacerbated a lot of issues people were already facing. And so that's really where my work has been focused right now in Chicago, is developing this school-based program. But before that, I spent a lot of time with young adults. I wrote my dissertation about suicide and depression in Black college students. So when thinking about how groups like InterVarsity and other campus groups and ministries can really reach young people who are facing serious mental health problems and concerns, it really, I think, just shows the importance of connection and ensuring that students feel like they have a place that they can go to, where they're going to be heard, where they're going to be in a relationship, where they're going to have real community that cares for them.
Yeah. Wow. I'm really intrigued to keep chasing down some of these ideas that you've brought up here. I mean, having being a parent who has kids in school, they're not in middle school, but even so, like, those are things that I'm thinking about, like, gosh, what are we doing to care well for our kids' mental health at home and at school? And how much can I entrust that to people at school? And just some of those things, like, so it's encouraging to me to hear that this kind of work is happening, and that we have some really great InterVarsity alumni who are on it. That's really exciting to me. Janelle, as you let's backtrack a bit and then work our way forward again. You mentioned some of the work that InterVarsity is doing on campus, the importance of intervention at the community level, and knowing that you are an InterVarsity alumna. Like, I'd be interested to hear just a little bit about some of your history with InterVarsity, what that story looks like for you, any impact that it's had on who you are becoming today and the work that you're doing now.
Yeah, great. I'm happy to share that. So again, I did my PhD at the University of Michigan. So I got involved in InterVarsity when I was a graduate student. And so
me too.
Great. So at that time, let's see, it was 2016. And that was a very contentious time, and still is in our country politically. And I had recently had just a series of very powerful encounters with the Lord, where I began to take my faith way more seriously. Prior to that, I was pretty lukewarm, and that cost me, but that's another conversation. So by the time 2016 rolls around, I'm really committed and surrendered, and deciding to really surrender my life, my career goals, my dreams, my plans to the Lord. And so I joined a church in Detroit, which is about 45 minutes away from Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so while I had a really vibrant and amazing church community in Detroit, I was still wanting to be in relationship with other believers on campus. So I joined the InterVarsity Graduate Christian Fellowship. And that was, I think, very important for my faith. It was a setting that was different from what I was used to, and different from what I was experiencing even in my home church in Detroit. It was a space where there were people from very different denominational backgrounds. That was really critical and really important. I think being able to be in relationship and in prayer with people who are coming from not just different disciplines, but different denominational backgrounds was, I think, a great learning opportunity. And also, again, the political climate and context was really shaping a lot of my wrestling around whether or not this could potentially be a place for me, whether or not I'd be welcomed, whether or not I would feel comfortable being in a InterVarsity space where I was one of the only few Black students. But for me, I'm really glad to say that I was welcomed, and that there was room and space to process and to try to make sense of things that were going on that were, I think, really harmful at the political level. But then also, I was invited to serve as a prayer coordinator. And so, I mean, what a responsibility. But when we think
absolutely.
When we think about all that was and is going on in our country, prayer really, I think, was a place where we as graduate students had really an opportunity to learn how to intercede, to pray for the nation and pray for one another as we were really navigating what it meant and why we identified as Christians at that time. So I learned a lot, and I think it did set me up for some of the things that I've, since decided to pursue since being here in Chicago. But it was a very transformative time in my development.
That's great. As a student who is, studying psychology and who's involved in this faith community, were there places at that time that you had any sense of awareness of, like, boy, I can tell that my involvement here in this space with this community is having some sort of positive impact on my own mental health, especially as I'm navigating, like, challenging classwork and challenging political climate and some of these, like, were there places that I didn't ask you to prepare for this question? It just sort of came to me in the moment here. But were there places where that was apparent to you because of the amount of time you were spending thinking about those kinds of things? Or maybe upon reflection, maybe now looking back.
Yeah. Well, I think that it came through in my own personal time with the Lord, but then also in my conversation with others. So in my own personal time with the Lord, there, in that time, again, it's ongoing. So I'm by no means saying that I'm arrived in any way.
Sure.
But
yeah.
At that time, I want to be honest in saying I was doing a lot of work to ensure that my heart did not become hardened. I was growing very disillusioned, and I'm still processing disillusionment around the idolatry and the politicalization of the Christian faith in this time. And that weighs on me. And it was weighing on me then, and it's still weighing on me now. And I am concerned about the implications and the credibility of the Christian witness on college campuses because of the ways that politics and religion have been conflated in this time. And so, in my own personal devotion time, I think that being connected to InterVarsity was an opportunity for me to really continuously and repeatedly bring before the Lord my concerns about my heart growing hard, growing bitter, growing resentful, all of which, one could say are warranted, but there is a place, in the text where we are repeatedly instructed to ask the Lord to search our heart and to purify us and to help us process the pain and suffering we witnessed. So individually, I was noticing that, but then also in my conversations with others, one of the things that I think is so important about being on a college campus is that you have an opportunity to interact and build a relationship with people who are spiritually curious, who are open, who are questioning their faith. And so being able to discuss and say that, hey, I'm in a space where we might have different understandings of the text or different previous experiences, but we're all committed to at least praying together, I think was a space where I was encouraged to be able to communicate that with others who at that point were also grappling with their faith and were unsure if they would feel safe in Christian spaces.
Sure. Yeah, it sounds like a place where you got to lean into the power of unity in the midst of disagreement, and iron sharpening iron, of what does it look like for me to help you think differently, and what does it look like for me to be open to the same thing, and are there ways that we can continue growing together and sort of meeting in the middle isn't what I'm looking for, but helping shape one another more and more in the direction of what it looks like to follow Jesus, even as we come from different places. Yeah,
I think. And again, also some of this is also disciplinary as well. So like I mentioned, I studied psychology and social work. So those are two fields where I think that people are grappling with conversations about justice and race differently than people in chemics or biomedical engineering. And so, so a lot of it was also just being able to create space for people, I think, to really process what was happening on campus and happening locally and happening nationally. Because every discipline is not addressing those topics in the classroom.
Right. Well, so then starting to move us back in this direction, Janelle, can you tell us a little bit about I'm interested to know more about the research that you're doing, the things that you're learning, but I'm also interested to know sort of the why behind it. Is there something that, are there parts of your story, whether InterVarsity related or not, just big picture Janelle's story, that were important for moving you in the direction of what you are researching today and the work that you're doing now?
Certainly. So a lot of people, whenever I give a presentation or some sort of talk, I'm regularly approached by someone at the end of a presentation who has some sort of personal connection to topics related to mental health and suicide prevention. In my case, there's someone in my life who I walked alongside of and continue to walk alongside of. It's been a very long time where they have really wrestled with chronic suicidal thoughts for a long time. And I think as a believer, again, that's maybe a whole nother conversation, but as a believer, it is difficult when you pray and things don't change. in the ways that you hope, or when you are begging and pleading the Lord for healing and it doesn't come in the way that you would expect, or when you are in a relationship with someone that you love very much and you continue to see them suffer for a decade, 2 decades.
Wow.
I mean,
yeah,
really, it can be very impactful in your faith. For some, it might lead them to maybe pull away. And for others, it also might be an invitation to continue to draw near. And so for me, that was one of the I think, primary motivators in thinking about my work. But then also the text itself, I think, is a key for suicide prevention. So Acts 16, I think, is really like one of my key passages in thinking about my research. I come from and was raised in a more vibrant, charismatic background where, the beginning parts of Acts 16, we're excited that Paul and Silas have gotten free from the prison. There's the earthquake, the chains are broken. Hallelujah. I love all that, right? Like that is true. That is good. But people oftentimes overlook the fact that the jailer was about to end his life. The jailer was about to kill himself. But Paul stops him and says, don't do this. And then right after that, the jailer surrenders his life to Christ. And then they go back to the jailer's home, and other people are also introduced to the gospel and give their lives to the Lord. And so I think that is a really important model for the way that I think about my work, that suicide prevention requires all of us to be paying attention to other people, but then it also is happening in community, and just thinking about the ways and opportunities for intervention. It has to happen in relationship with others. And so I feel like, that's just one passage. There are others I could point to, but that's just one passage that really does shape and fuel my commitment. And really, I think one of the things that led me to pursue this line of work.
Yeah, that's interesting that, there's sort of this scriptural basis or a scriptural support system that goes along with the work that you do, but also that you have some personal experience. And so I know that as you and I have talked in the past, there are words like meaning, hope, and joy that have come up in the work that you're doing, and in particular that you're bringing positive psychology into this. So much of what we hear about psychology is just in the realm of like, how can we make the bad things less bad, or as opposed to how can we promote health? How can we? What are the things that we can learn about what brings hope and joy and meaning, and how can we apply those to the situation? So, can you start to share a little bit about like, what does that look like? What is sort of the unique spin or the unique approach that you feel like you're taking? We've got this backdrop of community, personal experience, scripture. How do those things start to funnel in the direction of the things that you're researching, positive psychology in particular? Like, keep taking us down this road of what you're learning and how you're getting there.
Certainly. So I think you're exactly right. There's so much information in the academy, but then also just on the news that points out all sorts of negative outcomes across economics, education, health, psychology, just so many existing sources that have done a lot in pointing out the problems, particularly with Black Americans. Like I said, I'm in Chicago. And so Chicago has a negative reputation around violence and homicide. And so there have been I think it's hard for me to think about or identify another city that's had more research that's focused on that particular city, particularly in social sciences, than Chicago. And so I would say my efforts and my intention and desire to include an account for the role of positive psychology is just recognizing that a lot of the existing research in the social sciences does not account for the holistic experiences of Black Americans. So, a researcher could build an entire career that focuses solely on the negative outcomes. But positive psychology is really an invitation to study what's going right, what's going well, and how can we leverage that to promote better health outcomes, a better quality of life, a greater sense of well-being and purpose. And so for me, I really think that positive psychology in my work is really an opportunity to help and reach people who really believe that suicide is the best option for them.
Wow.
I think that setting these really intentional measures of meaning in life and hope and joy have been really essential in offering people pathways towards a desire to live. So by that, I mean that
wow,
as a researcher, it's not enough to just say, don't end your life. Don't attempt suicide. That is not enough. We must, as researchers and clinicians, offer people pathways towards hope and healing that would want them or help really promote a desire to live. And so helping people recognize that your life has a meaning and it has a purpose. And even if you don't know exactly what it is right now, let's help you work towards actually identifying the things that you feel like you're great at, the things that you feel like you're really skilled at, the things that you feel like you can excel at. Everybody needs something that they're good at in this life. I've also begun to study, aside from hope, like I mentioned, joy as well. So when we think about the fruit of the Spirit, I really believe that joy is something that the Lord has for us, that even though we experience hardship and suffering in this life, I do believe that the Lord invites us into joy and has that, and it's available for us. And so being able to study the pathways that lead to joy has been meaningful. And most recently, I've also begun to study the role of gratitude. Gratitude is it's a very powerful psychological resource that gets overlooked. And when we think about the Psalms and the other portions of the text, how often are we instructed to give thanks and to be grateful to the Lord? And the psychological research bears it out that people who are reporting more gratitude are experiencing more positive mental health outcomes. So I say all that to say that I really feel like research is essential in terms of reframing the way that we speak, the way that we write, and the way that we understand the experiences of Black Americans in this difficult world. Again, in a place like Chicago, where there's a lot of negative things that are said about the city, I really lend myself to the words of Psalm 27, where it says, I will remain confident of this, that I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And so I pray that over the city. I pray that over my block. I pray that over the places that I go, and believing that the Lord has goodness available for me, not just when I get to heaven, but that there's goodness right here on this block in this moment. But perhaps we just need to open our eyes to see the good things that the Lord is doing in this city, at this time, in this place, with this beautiful group of people that the Lord says are sacred image bearers made in his image.
Yeah. Janelle, do you get a sense that, I mean, I hear a lot about some of the person to person internal work and development. Is there an impact? Because you also mentioned all of the reputation of Chicago and all the research that's been done there. I mean, is there something even just to for someone who lives in Chicago, the perception that they have of how other people look at them, like from the outside looking in, that has like a negative impact on, does it add to some of the downward spiral of some of this thinking? And is that part of the problem as well? Just external perception and the lack of understanding of beauty, the beauty of Chicago that many people on the outside lack as well?
Certainly. I think so. And to be clear, there's a lot of pride, right? Like there are people, I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing to see Chicagoans have so much pride in where they're from. And to be clear, I am not speaking for Chicagoans. I'm not from here. I just got here in 2020. So
sure.
I'm not trying to say that I am a voice for anybody. I'm just saying that as a believer, I do think that it is important for us to really partner with what God says about people, or to believe and agree with what God says about a city, instead of repeating some of the really negative things that we see on the news. I mean, I regularly go back to the New Testament where we see this really important exchange where there's this question that's raised and saying, what good can come from Nazareth, right? And talking about the person who's at the center of the entire Christian faith. I regularly think about that question and reframing it and thinking about what good can and will and already has come from Chicago. So I think that negative perception is harmful, but there are a lot of wonderful community organizations, churches, city leaders, youth organizations that are doing a lot, I think, to really push back against this narrative, this negative narrative and this very narrow framing about what life, particularly Black life in Chicago, looks like.
Yeah. And you said that you live right in the area around like where you're working. Like you are there in the midst of all of the people that you are working alongside of. What kind of an impact has that had on you? Just the living in the community with people on either your research or even just like the heart and the motivation behind the work that you're doing.
Great question. I think it has been so powerful and so transformative. I think that researchers are very privileged. As a researcher, I'm incredibly privileged. I mean, I have a PhD, I'm a professor, so
yeah, right.
There's so much privilege there. And when there's distance between the researcher and the topics and communities that they're researching, I think there's a lot of gap and room for error, for misunderstanding, and for harm that could be introduced. And I want to be clear, just because I identify as a Black woman, that doesn't mean that I am not capable of doing harm in the spaces that I care about. Okay. There really does need to be like this role of careful self-reflection anytime a researcher is making any sort of claims about any group that they work with. So for me, living where I work and where I serve, I think, and where I worship, my church is, a very short walk from my house. And so nice. I think that it has been an important form of accountability. That's what I'll say, John.
Okay.
Doing my research in this area, doing research alongside of and in service to local communities, but then also recognizing that this is the same place where I work, where I live, and where I worship has been probably the most important form of accountability. And recognizing that my work and what I say about my work does have direct implications for people's lives. And I need to be very careful in how I frame it and what I say. And so, and I also feel like the people in the community who are outside of the university, I think provide a lot of accountability to ensure that researchers are doing work that is in service to others and is not just focused on themselves. I mean, I think it happens where researchers can become very self-centered and everything becomes about getting tenure and having big grants and getting millions of dollars in grants and, getting accolades and becoming a famous researcher, but yet the work is not reaching the people that's intended to serve. That's a problem. And so for me, living where I work and worship has been, I think, a really important way to ensure that I'm held accountable for the work that I do.
Janelle, you mentioned much earlier in our conversation, you were talking about some of the work that's happening in middle schools, I believe is what you mentioned. Yeah. Can you tell just I don't know what, if I ask a question that crosses some sort of a boundary, please just let me know and we'll just shuffle right along to something else. But are there elements of those, are there elements of that work that you can share with us of like what that looks like of stepping into middle school and some of the interventions that are happening there? And if you have any stories that you've brought with you that you can share about like, oh, this is some of the real life interaction and real life change, or at least reorienting, even if there's not necessarily big sweeping change that's happened yet in someone's life, we can tell that someone's mind is changing because of some of the work that's happening here. Someone's actions are changing. We know that sometimes one has to happen before the other one, and then they influence each other, thinking and acting. But like, can you tell us a little bit about the work and maybe any outcomes that you've started to see in that area?
Certainly. So we are working with a handful of local middle schools, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students to offer a video-based intervention. And so through the videos, these short video vignettes, we are trying to help young people first learn what suicide warning signs are. So identifying the risk factors, but then also really modeling for them healthy help-seeking practices. It's so important that young people feel comfortable going to an adult to disclose any sort of signs or symptoms of self-harm or suicide risk. And so we're trying to model that for young people early on, whether that means telling a teacher, telling another school staff person, telling their parents, telling a trusted adult who will help that young person get the resources and support they need. So that's really what we're trying to do and what we're after. while also accounting for just the other environmental factors that can make telling or disclosure very difficult for a child.
Yeah.
And so that work has been really meaningful. The school partners have been so open and so welcoming of my team. I have a great team of undergraduate and graduate students that work with me. And it's amazing to see the school partners and the school leaders just welcome us into that community, because they really, I think, want their middle school students to see that this is what they can become. They can be like the undergraduate and graduate students on our team. In terms of really impactful stories, I'll share two brief ones. One is that whenever I talk about the work in middle schools, I think it is very difficult, understandably, but I think it's really difficult for parents to accept that a sixth grader could get to the point where they are feeling so hopeless or where they are feeling so discouraged that they begin to believe that things would be better if they were no longer here.
Right.
I want us to sit with that, because there are many young people across the country who are at that point, whether they face childhood trauma, whether they've been bullied mercilessly, whether something traumatic has happened, like the loss of a parent, death of someone that they care for. Just all sorts of things can contribute to suicide risk. And I want to highlight, it's rarely just one thing, but with kids in particular, young people, we've got to take into account that their brains are very much still developing and they are impulsive, right? So it's very difficult for an 11-year-old or 12-year-old who's been bullied to believe that things can get better and that it won't always be as hard as it is right now. There's this impulsiveness that just hasn't been fully developed in their brains yet. And so this is why it's important that we intervene early and that we provide schools and parents and families with the resources needed to help shepherd that young person through these moments of impulse. Okay. And so in our work, what I've seen is what's been disheartening is that, the students have already in some ways had some exposure to death and to even suicide risk. So for instance, I was asked to speak with one student privately who had already lost a friend to suicide. This student was in 8th grade, and they had already lost a friend to suicide when they were in 5th grade. Okay.
What?
So I know that these topics are very heavy, but some kids have already had very early exposure to these very difficult topics. Another thing I want to highlight, John, is that while our program is really designed to reach students in schools and we go into the school and offer it, I've had some really profound conversations with parents who themselves are saying, hey, I'm not well. Or the parents themselves are saying, I am so overwhelmed. I am so stressed out. I am battling depression. I'm battling thoughts of self-harm. And, I think we can see over the past 5 years, there's been a lot of research on parent mental health during the pandemic and just the overwhelming responsibilities of work, of parenting, of financial pressure and stress, of health, all these things. So I would say I've been surprised to see that when we go into the schools, although we are directly serving students, the parents are coming to us and saying, hey, we actually need something to help us as well because we've got so much on our plates and we're overwhelmed. So eventually our goal is to create some sort of, multi-factor, multi-layer, multi-system approach where we're really trying to holistically serve and address some of parents' unique needs as well. But those are two quick things that I think have been really impactful in our time in schools.
That's a few of the things that I'm hearing as you share those, just the multiple layers of positive impact that even just your presence on campus, presence, the presence of your students, and just the work that you all are doing, and that models a really an opportunity for a healthy future to be in pursuit of, that is so exciting to me, that just that alone is an inspirational thing for young people to see of whoa, here's some people who are doing that. First of all, they see me, they're thinking about me, they care about me and my classmates. And I could do some of this kind of stuff someday. Okay. I like the idea of that. And that's really exciting to me, that before any intervention even happens, that there's like a model of the future, of a potential future that's being established for young people. And that's really exciting. And then that not only these students, but also their parents, and not to make either one of those like more exciting or important than the other, but that those are going hand in hand, of students are getting this direct intervention to learn and grow. Because one of the other things that stands out to me is just the lack of understanding of finality, of like that because they are impulsive, and because they don't really understand like an ultimate end, that it's really that suicide in general is a very difficult topic to for them to be able to grasp. And the fact that you all are trying to do contextualized work to help them understand and to seek out help, but that also their parents are being impacted by it for themselves and for their kids. Oh my goodness. That's just so fantastic. And that this is just the tip of the iceberg for the work that you all can be doing. Like I love this stuff. So that leads me to ask a question. This is a question that I ask everybody that comes on the podcast nowadays, and it is meant to be an obvious question. So, so the answer is obvious to this, but I just love hearing how guests respond to it. And that's, Janelle, would you say that your work, your research in positive psychology and suicide prevention, that is a place where you get to partner with God in his world-changing work?
Oh, certainly. Certainly. I mean, I think, the academy is not the easiest place to work, especially right now. Like my research is funded by the NIH. And so there's a lot of changes happening federally to work like mine. And so I would not be able to do this work if the Lord had not empowered me to do so. Yeah. And every time we have an opportunity to speak to a young person, or to work with schools, or to talk with parents, that is an opportunity to partner with the Lord and really, I believe, his vision for hope. I mean, the scriptures say he's the God of hope. That's one of the things that I love to read in the text, is where we say that the text says he's the God of all hope, and he's the God of comfort. And when we think about whether they're younger people, older people, whoever in between, someone getting to the point where they are considering taking their own life, I mean, that is an immense amount of emotional pain. And to know that there is comfort available, that there is hope available, I think is an opportunity for me to really see the Lord's hand at work through the project, through the students, through the communities we serve, through teachers and everyone in between. I want to be clear in saying that we're working in public schools. So we are not going in and saying, here are the scriptures, you need to adhere to the faith. That's not it at all. Right. I'll be very clear on this.
Yes, absolutely.
In this particular role, it is not my responsibility in this particular project to proselytize and to try to say, you need to believe what I believe. That's not the case at all. I believe that we can intervene and show love and compassion to people, irrespective of what faith tradition they come from, or what school they're at, or whatever. So I want to be clear in that.
Yes.
But I do believe that the message of the gospel is a message that tells us that there is something worth living for. That is a gospel message. And I believe that theme is present in my research. And so whether I'm talking with middle schoolers, high schoolers, young adults, or even older adults who are also facing various mental health challenges when they're reaching the later stages of life and facing, these larger existential questions when they've already experienced a lot of, grief or loss in those later stages. I think for everyone, there is a message in the gospel that points to a God who says that there is something worth living for. And so I see opportunities to continue to partner with the Lord in that work, while also continuing to raise these questions around and study these psychological factors like gratitude and hope and meaning in life and compassion and joy and forgiveness. I just think there's a lot of opportunity to continue down this road and integrating positive psychology and mental health research moving forward.
Absolutely. The thing that I love is as you're sharing about that, and you mentioned sort of the separation of like, we're not going in and directly sharing the gospel with students. Like, that's not our role in this space, but that as a follower of Jesus who is in this space, that the work that you're doing, and I know that you're not the sole builder of the work that you're doing, but that your part of the work that you're doing is so much built on these fundamental beliefs that you have about life and about life in Jesus. And that there is something about like just sort of imbuing the work that you do with this reality and this truth, that even just as you take something that is not overtly Christian into this space, that it is I want to say that I believe that this is like empowered by the work of God and the work of the Holy Spirit, that these things are being brought to this space to point people to life, and that, as you said, that is the work of the kingdom right there, to point people in the direction of life. And that is phenomenal. And I love getting to hear these stories, Janelle.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I think if we take the text seriously, when it says it will be known by our love, that means that we don't overlook when people are suffering. It means that we don't turn away when we actually have the means and the resources and the funds to actually intervene and offer help and offer support when we see a major public health issue arising. And so I just take the text seriously when it says we'll be known by our love. And I really hope that the students who participate in this program feel that they are cared for, that they are seen, that they are recognized, that they are valued in a world that tells these Black children that they are not valued, that their lives matter less, or that they don't matter, or that they're born to be criminals, as we've seen recently said this week about Black youth in Chicago. It is my hope that the message that they receive from our interactions with them is that they're valuable, and that there is so much for them to live for, and that we hope that they really do see a hope and a future for their own lives.
Thanks for tuning in, alumni. If you know someone who would enjoy the InterVarsity World Changers podcast, please be sure to share the episode with them. You can also support the podcast by leaving a rating and a review, or by visiting our donation page in the show notes. InterVarsity World Changers is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Santera, and edited by Caleb Leppert. Our theme song is Crazy by InterVarsity alumnus Andy Mineo. Go change that world, alumni.